Your Honor, they are part of the deal and part of the output. But I'm going to take what counsel just said. He now said the deal model is the only thing that shows. Yes, it shows an analysis of keeping COD on PlayStation. So we already have that's going to happen. And he said, well, why don't you have more financial analysis or a way of measuring? We have a way of measuring it. We also have Minecraft that's on play, which we heard from Mr. Stewart this morning, is more successful or generates more revenue on the other platforms than it does on Xbox. So there is a base analysis, and the fact that this is increasing output further and wasn't part of the model, it was part of the plan. And the fact that it is going to generate more gamers, there's no question that it's pro-competitive. I don't even understand. You said it yourself. How could it be that if more consumers are going to get access to it, it's not beneficial? I mean, it's, whether you call it the benefits or it's just increasing output as part of the deal. Either way, more consumers are going to get the game. And that's good for gamers, but it's also good for Microsoft.
Can I ask you about the XPass?
Game Pass?
Game Pass.
Yes.
Game Pass. I do think that it's not clear that Call of Duty may be on Game Pass and not on PlayStation Plus.
Correct. And Mr. Ryan, testimony
that I read and
offer are
that I understand. But explain to me why. Let's say, because as I understood Mr. Ryan, for example, you keep calling it the Thor game because or God of War. Is that on PlayStation Plus?
Yes. Getting head nods. Yes.
Yes.
Not day and date.
Not day and
date. I don't
date.
know if it's an older catalog game, but not day and date.
Well, anyway, he testified they see it a little differently and it's more like a catalog. And if Call of Duty were on Game Pass but not on PlayStation Plus, wouldn't that just incentivize Sony to up their game, so to speak, on the PlayStation Plus to improve the content, maybe make stuff available more immediately? In other words, it would increase competition as opposed to decrease competition.
Well,
because it's not available on PlayStation Plus right now. So unlike the console, it's not taking anything away from anybody. Nobody has the ability right now to pay just a subscription and get Call of Duty.
So I guess a couple, right? This is the likelihood of Mr. Kotick bringing his content to other places. There are possible future agreements. So Sony could say to Activision, we got to have it. Here's the offer. They reach terms. If this deal goes through that Microsoft proposes, that terminates for all time, right? The ability of an independent Activision to ever reach an agreement with Sony. So I just want to be clear about the but-for world and the world we're in if this deal goes through. Another point I'll make to Your Honor is if the response from Sony, this deal goes through, hypothetically, it's the domino effect from Mr. Spencer's email. We will have in our conclusions of law, the case law, that is an aggravating, not a mitigating.
No. I'm not saying, I'm just saying with their own content that they already have.
Yes.
To make it available at the same time that they release the games.
Possible, but a non-problematic or a less problematic from the antitrust law perspective way to achieve that would be if Game Pass loves Activision content, reach a deal short of a merger and pay them. And if they work out that deal, Sony says in response, gosh, we need our own deal or we need to change how we operate, that's good competition. But taking Activision content 100% in-house and foreclosing for all time a future deal between Activision and PlayStation or who knows what has to be invented subscription service, that is anti.
How again, and play that out how the consumer is harmed, because I still understand why Sony then just won't make their PlayStation Plus better. And again, how many people, you're only going to pay for the subscription to Call of Duty, the $15 a month or the $8 a month, if you like the other mix on the games, because otherwise it's cheaper to just pay right? This is why I actually am trying to figure out the market.
Your Honor, that
Yeah.
isn't quite right, because remember, unless they're playing it by themselves, they still have to subscribe for the multiplayer monthly fee. So it's not like you either buy it for $70 and you have no more fees. You still have to pay monthly to play it, either on PlayStation or Xbox. We showed you, we didn't spend much time on it. There's 4 subscriptions, and the
Yes.
first one is just for multiplayer
So you can't do multiplayer without a subscription.
without a monthly subscription.
Both.
Yes.
So turning back to your question, why doesn't Sony just do it? I don't.
Well, can I just stop 1 second?
Or yes.
But in terms of if you have a PlayStation to play multiplayer, is that in the agreement that was offered? Does that agreement include that the people on PlayStation will still always be able to have that option to do the multiplayer?
That's up to them because it's a consumer who buys that. It wouldn't, Xbox would not stop PlayStation 5 players from being multiplayer because that's what you purchase on the PlayStation
Okay.
website.
Reminder about Mr. Ryan's concerns about the whole offer on PlayStation Plus in response to that.
No, I understand that.
On
That's a different issue.
On why doesn't Sony put their games day and date? I don't know. I don't think we have a lot of record evidence about why. I'll get a snort from the defense bar, but as a regulator or law enforcer, I am agnostic. If they have a competitive strategy that they think helps them invest and make good competition in various markets, but it is not an adequate response by defendants to buying this content to say, good, now Sony will do the same thing we want to do and build a walled garden of their own. There's case law that that's not the right thing to do. Also, again, there's no evidence that that is a benefit. We don't know. The defendants, if they were to posit that as a benefit, good, everybody builds walled gardens, we all buy content, and day date is better. We have no evidence that's true. So we just don't want to interrupt the flow of how the competition is currently working.
And it all comes down again to Call of Duty.
I keep hesitating slightly.
Yeah, but that's where the evidence is, right? That's the driver, because there are acquisitions that happen. There are games that happen, and we're here because of Call of Duty. I just want to be clear so I know what to focus on.
I would, no question, it is critically important and it's the driver of the revenues. I only hesitate because they just have some really other great franchises that are huge.
As does Warner Brothers have the #1 game, at least it was earlier this year, right? Of Hogwarts. Like, you just don't know. And there are lots of other games. I mean, the other thing I'm just struggling a little bit with, and you can help me, is this industry is very different in that it's amorphous and it changes all the time and it's completely dynamic. And what video game, I know Call of Duty has had enduring, but other games have come and go, just like MySpace or TV shows or whatever. And I'm trying to figure out why the emphasis just so much on Call of Duty. I mean, isn't there an argument that will force someone to come up with another good annual game or some other thing? I mean, after all, Mr. Kotick started from essentially nothing, but he was able to do it, right?
So, taking your last point first, I'm sure that Call of Duty being great inspires people to try to be the next Call of Duty. We don't need this merger to do that. So Call of Duty existing in the universe on its own already accomplished.
No. Yeah, I'm getting more whether there is an anti-competitive effect.
Right. So Microsoft buys the Call of Duty. Why do we care? Yes, because it is unique in so many ways. It is every year. A lot of these games, they don't do every year a title. Not only is it every year, it's #1 every year. And the one disappointment Mr. Kotick pointed to was still #1. A heck of a disappointment. So it is unique. And the modeling that we saw from Microsoft shows how unique it is. Now, that model is not just Call of Duty, right? They modeled all the content, but it is a huge number. It is a hugely popular game. It has revenue generation that is off the charts year after year. So that is part of why we're here, for sure, Your Honor. If they were buying a much smaller game, we probably would have made a regulatory law enforcement judgment to spend resources elsewhere. But here we are because it is incredibly powerful. And I'll take it back down from the 50,000 foot to the evidence. We have seen from the testimony, the documents about Microsoft's strategy, about the role of AAA, the role of content in every single one of these markets, how essential content is. And it's something that I believe Ron and I were talking about way at the beginning of the session, that content is key. And this is key content, and it is a game that gamers want to play. And that incentive, once you own the game that gamers want to play, means you're going to put it where you can drive users to play it with you.
Some gamers want to play.
Sure.
Right?
But enough to make
it's a minority.
But enough to make billions of dollars in revenue. So almost any product, not everybody drinks Coca-Cola, but if Coke and Pepsi merged, we'd be here, right? So
Hopefully not here.
Yeah. Apologies. But if not everybody uses it, but our concern is with the consumers who do and may one day want to use it.
Your Honor, it's not an essential input. There's a big difference between it being necessary, which is what the case law says, and being a popular, enduring, wonderfully successful game. No one disputes that. It's one piece of content. There's no case that says one piece of content will tip a market, or if one competitor gets it, there'll be harm to competition. And you can think about it. If we go back to the old days when some of us only watched 3 networks, there's much more content now, right? Because there's these subscription services. More content has been generated, to your point, to go back and forth. There are enduring franchises. Everyone would like to own the Bond franchise, I'm sure, in the streaming world, but only one company owns it now. It doesn't mean all these other competitors aren't successful. The same with Seinfeld. Name your favorite show. There are certain types of content or individual pieces of content that are extraordinarily popular. But Sony has many of those too, like God of War. My favorite.
Did Sony develop God of War itself?
Yes, as far as I understand.
I think that's their point. We wouldn't be here if Microsoft had created Call of Duty. It's the purchasing it, right? That the argument is, and the theory behind the antitrust laws and the whole case is that, and the whole theory behind Section 7, but is that we don't benefit from just buying up each other. We benefit from keeping things separate and therefore incentivizing people to create themselves.
But that's not true. We want smaller folks to create content, right? And the fact that someone purchased, and they're not small anymore, Activision, but as you say, they were originally, the fact that they produce popular content and someone else wants to buy it to distribute it, and then someone else wants to make more content. I mean, that's the art that's going on, whether it's movies, gaming, or television. And no one says if you don't have this one game or this one television program or movie, you can't compete. I mean, it's kind of it's an odd suggestion. It's not the type of essential input, that you need a widget and the widget seller, you're buying the widget seller so nobody else can purchase those widgets. Whether PlayStation created its games, it also contracts for them. Final Fantasy 16, as someone pointed out to me, it's called 16 for a reason. It's been out there for a long time and it's been very successful. You don't have to have an exact replacement. No consumer is entitled to have the exact piece of content they want. But in this case, there's lots of competitors. As you said, this is a small part of the market. It's incredibly, successful. I know that doesn't equate to being essential and something that one party cannot own, especially in light of the promises and contracts that they're going to distribute far and wide, and that all of the documents, Your Honor, every piece of evidence, everyone who came here, whether it was from Microsoft and Activision or from Mr. Kotick, said it makes sense to keep it on multiple platforms. And counsel has not pointed to one piece of evidence, one document that says Microsoft was thinking about holding it back. Nobody did that analysis. Nobody asked for that. And again, why didn't they do that financial analysis? Because it doesn't make any sense to them economically and based on their good business judgment.
All right, quite a bit there, if I may, Your Honor, just very briefly.
Okay.